You ever read a book that's been translated and wonder, could an AI do this? Could it really capture something like Tolstoy or a poem by Neruda with the same feel as a person? It's a huge question because translating literature has always been seen as like the final boss for any machine. It's not just about swapping one word for another. It's about style, it's about emotion, it's about the soul of the story. So, yeah, let's dive in and see why this is still AI's final frontier.
And get this is not a new problem. This quote is from 1985. We're talking nearly 4 decades ago. Even way back then, researchers knew that computers were pretty good at translating, say, a technical manual, where just getting the meaning right is all that matters. But literature? Well, that's a whole different beast. It's all about the style, and as this quote says, computers just did not fare well with that.
Okay, but that was ages ago. I mean, we live in the world of neural networks and massive AI models now. So you gotta ask, has anything really changed? Are these super powerful AIs, like the ones we use every day, finally ready to take on the art of literature? Let's take a look at the evidence.
So on the left, you've got a human translation of a Chinese story. It's clear, it makes sense, you can picture the whole scene. Now look at the right. That's the machine's attempt, and it's a mess. Later, large animals shot down. Who shot it down? 8 wild boar. Who did the eating? All the characters, the they and the he, they've just vanished. The story itself is completely lost. And this right here, this is the core of the problem.
To really understand why the AI failed so spectacularly, we need to put on our detective hats. And our biggest clue is this idea from linguistics called cohesion. The best way to think about it is as the invisible glue that holds the story together. It's the stuff that makes sure all the pieces connect and are talking about the same things.
Let's get a little more specific, though. We're talking about something called referential cohesion. This is basically that web of connections you get when you keep mentioning the same characters and objects over and over. It's how our brains know that when we read the nurse, and then she, and then her, we're still talking about the exact same person. It creates this thread that we can follow through the story.
Let's see it in action. Here's a little snippet from a story by Isaac Asimov. Suddenly, the nurse resorted to direct measures. She seized the boy's upper arm. Always, his frightened eyes were on her, watching. Now, as you read that, you're tracking who is who without even thinking about it. But let's actually visualize what your brain is doing behind the scenes.
See that? We can literally draw a line connecting the nurse to she, and then to her. This is our first cohesive thread. It's a chain of words that keeps the character of the nurse right there in our minds as we're reading along. And now, let's add the second thread for the boy, connecting the boy's to his. You can see how these threads start to weave through the text, creating this really sturdy fabric. This dense web is exactly what makes a story feel solid and easy to follow. And that's the key takeaway here. This cohesive glue is what makes a story work. All right, time for our first experiment. Is this glue stronger in literature than it is in other kinds of writing? The theory was, yeah, a story is going to be way more cohesive than, say, a news article. Let's see if the numbers back that up.
So on the left, you've got our story, which is super focused on the nurse and the boy. On the right, a news article. It's talking about studies, operations, therapies, patients. The focus is way more spread out. You can just feel that the story is denser, right?
And yep, the data proves it. This chart is basically measuring the density of those character threads. In short stories, every character or important object gets mentioned, on average, 5.4 times. But in news articles, it's only 3.9. So there you have it. Literature is quantifiably stickier. It creates a much denser, more cohesive world.
Okay, so we've established our motive. Literature relies on these dense, cohesive threads. Now it's time to put our main suspect, machine translation, on the stand. Let's see if it can handle this complexity or if it just cracks under pressure.
So this was the central question of the experiment. When an AI translates a story, does it keep those dense threads that are so important to the style, or does it just lose them?
And this is where the evidence is just damning. Look at that top row. A human translator takes a short story and keeps that high cohesion score of 5.2. The glue stays strong. But now look at what the machine does. It takes that same story and the score plummets to 3.8. The AI is basically taking a rich literary story and making it read like a flat news article. It's stripping out the very texture that makes it a story in the first place.
If you want to put a single number on it, here it is. Google Translate only captured about 79% of the cohesive connections that a human did. Now you might think, hey, 79%, that's a C+, that's not so bad. But think about it this way. That means 1 out of every 5 of those little threads holding the story together just snaps. And it doesn't take very many broken threads for the whole narrative to just unravel.
So we know the threads are breaking, but why? How? Let's zoom in and look at the evidence from the crime scene, so to speak.
Exhibit A, the case of the missing character. This goes right back to that first example we saw. In languages like Chinese, it's really common to drop pronouns like he or they if the context makes it obvious. A human translator reads the whole story, gets the context, and correctly adds they and he back in. But the machine? It's just looking at one sentence at a time. It sees the word ate, and it has no idea who ate. And poof, the character thread is completely severed.
And then we have Exhibit B, the case of mistaken identity. Here, the characters are arguing about one specific bird. The human translator gets this and consistently uses the word hen to keep it clear. The machine, though, isn't tracking the hen as a single object across the story. So it translates the same Chinese word as hen in one sentence and chicken in the next. And to the reader, that's super confusing. Is it the same bird? Is it a different one? This kind of inconsistency just shatters the cohesion. So after looking at all the evidence, it's time for the verdict. What's the fundamental flaw here that causes all these problems? Well, the answer is actually pretty simple.
And here it is. The verdict is in. Today's AI is sentence blind. It works on a sentence-by-sentence basis, almost exclusively. It can translate the words inside a single sentence with mind-blowing accuracy. But it completely fails to see the larger narrative world that those sentences are trying to build together. It translates the words, but it loses the world.
So where do we go from here? Well, researchers say that the next generation of translation AI has to break out of its little sentence-level prison. It needs to be built to look for patterns across the whole text, to track characters from the first page to the last, and to understand not just cohesion, but all the other little things that make up a writer's style. And all of this leads to one final really big question. Fixing cohesion is a technical problem, and it'll probably get solved, but it points to something much deeper. To truly translate a piece of literature, a machine has to do more than just process words. It has to, in some meaningful way, understand a story. And whether an AI can ever really do that, well, that's a story that's still being written.